We begin today the Gemara towards the bottom of Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis, 6 lines from the bottom of the Amud. We're in the sugya of an Evet Kanani, freeing an Evet Kanani, or different halachas regarding Evet Kanani. Yiba Yeluhu. So the Shaila was asked, Evet Shemochrei Rabbi Liknas. An Evet, his master, sells the knas that could be collected if this Evet is damaged or is killed. What happens now? In other words, the knas is not here yet. Nothing happened yet. But if the Evet if the master could collect the knas, you're selling that rights for the knas to someone else. Could you sell this or not? Machor or eina machor? Could you sell this or could you not sell this? So the basis of the Gemara Shaila here, as the Gemara will explain now, is you can't sell a dover shalei bal olam. Something that doesn't exist, you can't sell. So here, this knas, could you sell it? It's money that someone may owe you if they damage this Evet. So the Mefarshim explain, as we'll see from the continuation of the Gemara as well, if you're just selling that knas, it's definitely a dover shalei bal olam. But if you're selling the Evet for the value of the knas that could be collected potentially from him, then maybe it's considered to be a dover shalei bal olam. So the Gemara explains, to boil Rab Meir, to boil Rab Banan. This is a question both according to Rab Meir and according to the Rabbanan. To boil Rab Meir, it's a shaila according to Rab Meir. So Rab Meir is the one that holds that you could sell something that's not here in the world yet. But maybe when did Rab Meir say this? Paid is dekel. Only when it comes to the fruits of a palm tree. So over there, if you're selling the palm tree for its fruits, even though the fruits did not grow yet, you can sell that. Why Davidid also? Because it's going to come. It's just a matter of time in the season that it's going to grow. So that's considered to be something that's guaranteed, even though it's not actually here. Who says that an ox will come and gore this Evet, and then you'll have the payment of the knas? And not only that, if he will be gored, who says the person, the owner of the ox, will be obligated to pay? Dilme, Maide, Umifta. Maybe he will come and admit to what happened before witnesses come, and with this will be pater of paying. This is the cloud regarding a knas. We're talking here about a payment for this Evet, which is a knas. Anytime you maide and a knas, you're pater of paying. So this whole thing is not only leibala olam, but you don't even know if it'll ever come. So therefore, maybe Rab Meir here would agree that you can't sell this. On the other hand, v'tiboy l'Rabbanan. This is a shaila according to the Rabbanan as well. So Rabbanan, usually their opinion is that a person cannot sell something that's not here in the world yet, but Ela Kogaim paid his dekel. Maybe the Rabbanan are saying so only regarding fruits that grow on a tree. The hashta miyelesno. Even if it's gonna come, but it's not, it doesn't exist now at all. Aval hacha, but over here, hakoi shoyer, vakoi evet. The Evet exists in the world. The shayr that would gore him exists in the world as well. Elamai, the incident that took place, that the shayr gores the Evet and which creates the payment of knas, that didn't happen yet. But the existence of the shayr and the Evet is here in the world. So maybe the Rabbana would agree this is called davar shabal olam, and you could sell it. Amar Rababa, so Rababa says Toshama. Let's bring a raya from the following brayse. The pasuk says v'yilid bayis, that a yilid bayis. So this is a pasuk that says regarding truma, that when you have an Evet that's owned by a kohen, he can eat truma as well. And the pasuk says that the yilid bayis, that you have a shifcha kananis that was owned by a kohen, and she gave birth to a yilid, to a child, and born in the home of the kohen. He could also eat truma. Matamad loymar. Why does the pasuk have to say that this Evet born in the house of a kohen could eat truma? Im kinyin kesef oichel, if a kohen, as the pasuk there in the beginning says, kohen ki yikne nefesh kinyin kaspai. If he acquires a slave, he wasn't born in his house, he just acquired him. He could eat truma, yilid bayis like kol shekain. So if it's a slave that's born in his house, for sure he should be able to eat truma. So why does it have to say it? It says the pasuk, iluk, it says the Gemara that is, iluk kain hayisi aime, if it would only say that if you acquire Evet, you can eat truma, he can eat truma. So yisi aime, I would say, ma kiyin kesef sheyesh bo yishava kesef, oichel, that when you buy a slave, so you paid for him, and the pasuk calls it kinyan kesef. That means he has to have a value of at least a pruta, of a shava kesef. Then you can eat truma. Afilid bayis sheyesh b'shava kesef. So too, this child born in the house of the kohen, he has to be someone that has a shabbos. He has some kind of a value of kesef. Oichel. Then he can eat truma. Uminayin. How would I know though? Shaf b'shein shava klum. that this Evet born in the house of the Kayin, he has no value at all. And we'll see soon in the Gemara how that is, that he has no value at all. But Pashtus, the case over here is a person that's very ill. The Gemara soon says, Mukashchin, that he has boils all over his body and he can't be sold for anything. He has no value at all. So how do I know that an Evet born in the house of the Kayin, the master, and he has no value, that he could still eat Trumah? Talmud Loima, Yulid Bayis Mekom. That's why the Torah is adding over here that the Yulid Bayis, the very fact that he was born in the house, he can eat Trumah. On the other hand, the Brisa says, I would still say, Yilid Bayis, this Evet born in the house of the Kohen, Ben Sheyesh by Shavah Kesef, Ben Shein by Shavah Kesef, whether he has value to him, whether he does not. So the Pasuk is saying, Yilid, as long as he was born, he can eat Terumah. Kinyan Kesef, but a Evet that was acquired by the Kohen, so over here, since the Pasuk uses the term Kinyan Kesef, maybe I would say, Yesh by Shavah Kesef Eichel. If he has value of kesef, he could eat truma. Ein b'shavah kesef ein eichel. But he does not have a value of truma. He cannot eat truma. Talmud loymar. But I learned from here the pasuk puts together kinyan kaspoi, and then it says v'yilid beis. So I compared the two. Ma yilid beis af b'shein shavah klum eichel. This kohen that was born in the house, this evet that was born in the house of the kohen, he can eat truma. Af kinyan kaspoi af b'shein shavah klum eichel. The same is with the evet that he acquired and paid for him. But if now he's worth nothing, he's owned by the kohen, he can eat truma. That's the Brisa. So now the Gemara asks, so as I said, the Pashtus, the reason why this Evet is not worth anything is because he's ill, he can't be sold for anything, he has no value at all. But the question is, he still should have some value. Why? If you're going to tell me that a master can take advantage of his Evet and he could make some money off of him by selling the value of the knas that he would have to collect if he could collect if someone would damage him. If so, again, you can sell that knas. So is there any Evet that you can't sell and make some money off of him for his knas? So what does this Brisa mean when it says that there's an Evet that has no value at all? There should be at least this minimum value of someone that's ready to pay a pruta for the rights to collect this knas of shloshim kesef. Answers the Gemara, there is such a case. When is that? Ike Evet treifa. An Evet which is a treifa, so over here, by a treifa, there is no knas, because a treifa is a person that will die within 12 months, and therefore, Rashi says he's called a gavra ketila. It's like he's dead already. So there's no payment of knas in such a case. But even if he's a treifa, v'hachazi lemekem kamei. So even though there shouldn't be any knas, but on the other hand, though, something, a basic work this Evet could do, he could stand in front of his master some kind of a very simple, easy task. He's something that he could do, so he still has some value to him. So one answer is no, if it's a person that's mamish, repulsive, and he has boils all over his body, so it's possible that he could be both a treifa and a menuvel mukashchin, and he has no value at all. That's what this Brisa was talking about. If he's owned by a kohen, he still eats truma. Another shaila, misha chetzi eved v'chetzi ben chayrin. So this eved, half ben chayrin, shekidish bas chayrin. And he went and he was Makadesh a Bas Chayrin. He's Makadesh a girl, a Yiddish girl. Mahu, what's the halacha? Does this Kedushin take effect? So the Gemara explains the basis of this Ibaya. This is based on halachas that we find B'nigeya to Kedushin B'chlal. When you have a person that comes and says to a woman, half of me is Mekadeshes to you. So the halacha there actually is that she becomes Mekadeshes to him. Well, he said only half of me is Mekadeshes. He really meant he's totally married to her. He used the term half because a man is allowed to marry 2 wives. So he's saying half of me is married to you. I may marry someone else as well. But the Kedushin takes effect. But then there's another halacha. What if a person comes and says to a woman, half of you is married to me? Then the halacha is the Kedushin does not take effect. Because you can't say that he meant to say that you have the option to marry a second husband, because there's no such thing. She could only marry one husband. So he's saying just half of her is married to him. You can't marry a half a woman. That's the halacha when you get to Kedushin B'chlal. Now the question is, how do we compare that to this halacha of the Chatzi Eved and Chatzi Ben Chayrin? So the Gemara explains. If you're going to say as follows, Ben Yisrael Shamal Bas Yisrael. So Ben Yisrael says to a Bas Yisrael, Hiskachi Lechetzia. You're going to marry half of me. Mukadeshes, as I mentioned, the Kedushin takes effect. The Chazye Lekule. So I can tell you that maybe I can't compare it here to this Chatzi Eved and Chatzi Ben Chayrin, that maybe you'll say the same thing. Or just like a Yid could say, you're married to half of me. So too, a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin, only the Ben Chayrin part of him could create a Kedushin, so maybe it should take effect here as well. So for that, the Shaila is, over there I would say the Chazye Lekule. This woman could marry this entire person. He's fully a Yid. But but over here he's Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin, so the Kedushin is not Roy for him fully, only for half of him. So maybe here it does not take effect. On the other hand, V'im Tim Tzelaymar Ben Yisrael Amekadosh Chatzi Isha, by Ben Yisrael that tells a woman half of you is married to me. So over there the halacha is Eina Mokadeshes. She's not Mokadeshes because you can't marry a half a person. There's no such a thing. The marriage is full. So since by Isha you can't interpret his words that he meant to say that you're fully married to me, but you could marry a second husband, so therefore he's marrying half of the woman, there's no such a thing. So you should say the same thing over here, that Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin, since half of them cannot get married to this woman, so you can't have a marriage which is a half for the half of the person. But, says the Gemara, there's still a room for a Shaila. Why? Because over there, I would say, the reason is the Shayr B'Kinyone, because you're leaving out half of the woman unmarried. That's impossible. But you're not leaving anything out. The chelik of the person that's roy for marriage is becoming fully married. The chelik of the person that cannot be married is not getting married. So maybe the condition should take effect for this Chatzi Eved and Chatzi Ben Chayrin. So what's the halacha? Toshama, the Gemara says, let's bring a raya from the halacha that this is a brisa we brought before already. Hey miss, Mishachatzi Eved v'Chatzi Ben Chayrin. Asher gored and killed this individual that's half Eved and half Ben Chayrin. So what do? Neis and Chatzi Knas l'Rabbi, half of the payment of Knas, which is for the half that he's a Eved, gets paid for the master. And then the other half of him, which is a Yid, v'Chatzi Kaifer, the payment of Kaifer for killing this Eved, or killing this half, which is a Ben Chayrin, l'Yarsha. So over here, you pay Kaifer, and that goes to his inheritors. Now the question is, v'yamrit kiddushav lav kiddushin. If you're going to say this Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin cannot get married with a proper kiddushin, so you can't get married, so you can't have any children. So Yarshim Minale. How could this brisa say that there's inheritors that would collect that kaifer? He can't get married, so he has no Yarshim. So you see clearly that he could get married, and there's Yarshim here. Ravada Barava answers, Kisha Treifa. What happened over here is that he didn't get killed. This Sher gored him and made him into a treifa, meaning that he will die eventually. He'll die within 12 months, but he didn't die now. When it says that you have to give the payment of the kaifer to his inheritors, it didn't mean literally his inheritors, it means himself. He's the one that's taking the money for himself because he's still alive. So there's no raya from here that he got married and he had children. But Rava doesn't accept this pshat. There are two answers why not to accept this pshat here. Chada, number one, the Yershav Katan. Yershav literally means there are Yershim here. V'oid, another question, Kaifer who? We're talking over here about this payment of Kaifer, that you have to pay when a Yid is killed by a Sher. V'amer Rish Lakish said, Kaifer e mishtalam elalachem miseh. This payment of Kaifer for an ox that gored a man and killed him is only after he died. So you can't tell me over here that he became a treifa and there's a payment of Kaifer. Rashi explains regarding Knas, it doesn't clearly say in the Torah that he died. So over there, the payment is even if he didn't die. But when it comes to Kaifer, that's only if he died. So how could you say that the payment is to him himself? Says the Gemara, Ela ma Rava. So therefore, Rava says the pshat on that brisa is Roy little, but ve'enloi. It says that the inheritors would have to take this Kaifer, but there are no Yershim, since he can't get married, and therefore nobody takes it. That's what it really means. So you don't actually pay it. So there's no raya that he could get married, and there's Yershim here. Omar Rava says, Kishem. So now, before we were talking about a half Eved and half Ben Chayrin, now here Rava says regarding a half Shivcha and half Bas Chayrin. So Rava says, Kishem, Shamakadesh, Chatzi Isha, Enim Ukadeshes. Just like, as we mentioned before, if you tell a woman, half of you is married to me, she's not Mukadeshes, Kach, Chetzia, Shivcha, Chetzia, Bas Chayrin, Sheniskacha. If you want to be Mekadesh, half Shivcha and half Bas Chayrin, so you could only marry half of her, only half of her is a Yid, Ein Kiddusha Kiddushin. The Kiddushin does not take effect. So here he doesn't have any Shaila. Here he compares and it says that there's no Kiddushin. Darash Rabbi Baravone darshan the same halacha. Kishem Shama Kadesh Chatzi Isha Einam Ukadeshes Kach Chatzi Shivcha v'Chatzi Bas Chayrin Sheniskacha Einam Ukadeshes. The same thing. Now, Amalei Rav Chisda, so Rav Chisda asked him this, the svara that the Gemara brought before, Midami, how could you compare being Mekadesh a half a Isha to being Mekadesh a Chatzia Shivcha and Chatzia Bas Chayrin? Hasam, Shayr B'Kinyana. There, it's a woman that you could marry fully, and you're leaving out part of her not acquired by you. You can't marry a half a woman and leave part of her to be not owned by you. But Hachal is Shayr B'Kinyana. Here, you left nothing over. The chelik of the Isha that's Shayr to be married is fully married to you. So how can you compare the two? So after Rav Chisda asked this question, he actually retracted from his opinion. So Hada Oikim Rabbi Barafuna Amayra Alei. So Rabbi Barafuna brought the Amayra, which is the interpreter that would explain the halachas that he taught. He brought him and the Darash and he darshaned as follows. And he retracted and he gave the following introduction. This that you stumbled, that's under your hands. This refers actually to Taita. Why is Taita over here saying that you stumbled upon it and then it's under your hands? Because a person does not really come to understand Torah properly until you learn and you stumble in the words of Torah, and then you come to the correct understanding. And therefore he said as follows, even though yes, it's true, if you mekadesh half a woman, the kedushin does not take effect. The kedushin does take effect because the portion of this woman that could be married is fully married to you. My time, you left nothing out, so she's fully married. You want to continue his Adam Iram that spoke about this. Amar Rav Sheishes. Rav Sheishes said, no, he did compare. He said, Kishem, Shemakadesh, Chatzi Yishayin Mukadeshes, Kach, Chetzi Shivcha, V'Chetzi Bas Chayrin, Sheniskatsha, Ein Kedusha Kedushin. The Kedushin does not take effect. So he actually went back to what Rav said in the beginning. Now, if a person will whisper into your ears and will argue with you and will say as follows, who is this shivcha charufa that the Torah speaks about? The shivcha charufa is half shivcha and half free, and she's married. And there, if someone else has a relation with her in this time, she's married, so the pasuk says there's no chiv misa, but you have to bring a carbon asham. So who is this shivcha charufa? She's half shivcha and half free. She's married to an eved ivri. So this lashon that it says muras al eved ivri seems like that the marriage does take effect over here. And Rashi here says that right now the Gemara understands when it says muras al eved ivri is lav dafka. She could be married either to an eved ivri, which is allowed to marry a shivcha kananis, or she could be married even to a Yisrael. And what does that mean? She could marry a Yisrael because half of her is free. She could marry for that half. She could marry a Yisrael. So Alma, so you may argue and say from here, I see Basit Rusihi, that she could get married. So how am I saying that she can't? So Amay Loi, so Rav Shesha says, answer him, this is not true. Klach Etzel Rabbi Shmuel, go to what Rabbi Shmuel said and he'll teach you as follows. Shuhu Aimer, he said, B'shivcha Kananis, Hama'urasa Le'eved Ivri. It's talking dafka about a shivcha kananis that's half shivcha kananis that is married to an eved ivri dafka. Now you'll ask, for shivcha kananis basa terusihi, this lashon that it says edison is usually the lashon that's used for real kedushin regarding a yid. So if here when it says that this shivcha charufa, she's married to an eved kanani, could she really be properly married with edison? What's the answer? The word mu'ureses over here means that she's designated, that she's married the way the marriage is between a shivcha kananis and an eved ivri, which is not the regular marriage of Yisrael. So hachanami, my mu'ureses miyuchedes over here by the shivcha charufa, mu'ureses means she's half shivcha and half bas chayrin, and she married this eved ivri. She's allowed to marry an eved ivri, but it's not the regular marriage of a yid. But when it comes to marrying a yid, Rav Shesha says, Chatzi Shivcha, Chatzi Beschayrin cannot be married to a Yid. Rav Chisda. Okay, so this is the conclusion of this halacha. Another halacha the Gemara says, Chatzi Shivcha, the Chatzi Beschayrin. So this half Shivcha and half Beschayrin, Sheniskat Shal Reuven. She got married to Reuven, V'nishtachrera, and then she became fully freed, V'chazra V'niskat Shal Shimon. And then Shimon, which is a brother, came and married her. And now Meisu Shneim, both Reuven and Shimon passed away. Misyabemes leLevi. Levi, and so both of these husbands passed away without any children. So the mitzvah of Yibum will apply to the brother Levi. Now, what's the chiddush of this? Who was she married to? Was she married to Reuven? Was she married to Shimon? It looks like she was married partially to Reuven. First half of her was married to Reuven, and then she was freed. And now the other half of her was married to her brother, to Shimon. It looks like sort of she was married to both brothers. So you may think, I'm not going to say over here that since she was sort of married to these two brothers, no Yibum could apply. So Rashi here brings Barichas, the source of this we learned in the Gemara in Yevamis, that the Torah says by Yibum that Umeis Achad Mehem, that if one brother that married this wife passes away, then the brother has to do Yibum. But over here, if she's coming from two brothers, then there's no Yibum. And the Gemara there in Yevamis describes how such a thing could happen. But so over here, you may say that this is also a case that sort of two brothers were married there, so there's no halacha of Yibum. So the Gemara says, no, there's no two brothers married to her. You can't have Kiddushin taking effect for two brothers. Because manavshach, either or. Kiddusha de Reuven, Kiddushi. If you're going to say that the Kiddushin of Reuven took effect when she was still a Chatzi Shifcha and Chatzi Bas Chayren, like the opinions we brought before that it takes effect, so then Kiddushi de Shimon, lav Kiddushin. So then the brother that was Mekadosh is not a Kiddushin. Vi Kiddushi de Shimon, Kiddushi. If you're going to say that the Kiddushin of Shimon takes effect, so then Kiddushi de Reuven, lav Kiddushin. So then the Kiddushin of Reuven did not take effect. So she was only married to one brother. Itmar, we learned the halacha as follows: Chatzia Shivcha v'Chatzia Bas Chayren. Sheniskat shel Reuven. She first got married to Reuven, and then v'nishtachrera, and then she was freed, and now v'chazra v'niskat shel Shimon, and then she got married to Shimon. So over here, when the Gemara is talking about Reuven and Shimon, it's not talking necessarily about brothers. What it means is she got married first to one Yid when she was a half Shivcha, half Bas Chayren, and then after she got freed, Shimon gave her, a different person gave her a Kiddushin. So just now the Gemara said, either she's married to the first or she's married to the second. So here the Gemara actually brings a machlokes about this. Who is she married to? So Rav Yosef Bachama says, Rav Nachman, the name of Rav Nachman, Paku Kiddushei Rishon. The Kiddushin that the first one gave her, even if that took effect at that time, like the opinions we brought before, that it does take effect, but now that she was fully freed, she becomes like a Katan Shanayla, Rashi says. Now she's fully freed, she's like a new person, and so that original Kiddushin is off, and now she's married to the second one. Rav Zeir Omer Rav Nachman. Rav Zeir said in the name of Rav Nachman, no. The opposite. Gomru Kiddushei Rishen. Now that she was freed, the previous Kiddushin that was partial, and then the halacha was, this is a Chatzi Shivcha v'Chatzi Bas Chayren, this is the halacha of Shivcha Charufa, and there's only Asham and Malkus if you mizana with her. But now that she was fully freed, so that Kiddushin with this husband will spread and will extend fully, and she'll become completely married. And so he said, okay, so that's the machlokes over here. What happens over here when she gets free? Does the Kiddushin spread? She becomes fully married to this husband she's already married to, or no? Paku, it's mizbatel, and she is now married to the second one. So Amar Abzeira, Kavasididi Mistavra. Like what I said is more logical, because if you look over there in the pasuk by Shivcha Charufa, the pasuk says, Lo Yumsu. So over here, there's no Chiyuv Misa when you're mizana with this Shivcha Charufa, which is a sort of an Eishes Ish. Why? Kileichu Pasha. Because she was not freed. So it's mashma that she was married. Now the Gemara understands the pshat over here is she's married, but the marriage is not a complete marriage because she's not completely freed. And therefore there's no chiyuv misa for being mizana with her at this point. So it's mashma the pasuk, but once she is freed, yomsu. So then there is a chiyuv of misa that applies for being mizana with an eishes ish, meaning the moment she's freed. The moment she's freed, that marriage with this husband that she's already married to becomes completed. Like exactly like Rav Zayda said, that the marriage to this husband spreads, and now there is a chiyuv misa. Amalei Abaye, but Abaye said, going back to what the Gemara already quoted before, but Ulatana debate Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel said that's not the pshat by Shivcha Charufa. She's not married to a Yid. The Amma b'Shivcha Kananis hamuresas le'eved ivri. That we're talking about a Shivcha Kananis married to an eved ivri. So hachanami. So over here, could you say that chichu pasha yumasu? That pasha yumasu means that if she's going to be freed, so then she's going to be chayiv misa. How could you say such a thing? You can't say that if she's freed that she's going to be chayiv misa because she's not yet married. She was married to this eved ivri. It's not even a real marriage b'chlal. Right? So over here you can't say when she's freed. So if someone's mizana with her, there would be a chayiv misa. It's not a marriage, a proper marriage to a Yisrael. So what are you going to say? Shechufsha. That the pshat of the pasuk is that now that she was not freed, so there's no chiyuv misa. But if she was freed, v'chazra v'niskacha, and she got married to someone else, then there would be a chiyuv misa. So chanami shechuvsha v'chazra v'niskacha. Over here, when she's freed and she gets married to someone else, that kiddushin to someone else takes effect. But the kiddushin to the first husband that she's married to now does not extend, does not spread like Rab Zayda said. Amar Rav Huna bar Katina Amar Rav Yitzchak. Rav Huna bar Katina said in the name of Rav Yitzchak, Ma'isa be'isha. There was a story with a woman. Again, let me do this again. Ma'isa be'isha achas. There was a story with a woman shechetze shivcha v'chetze baschayrin, half shivcha, half free. V'kofu es rabba v'asa baschayrin. They forced the master to free her completely. So this is going back to what it said in the Mishnah that Bishamai said, and Basil agreed, that by Chatzi Avil Chatzi Ben Chayrim, because he has a mitzvah of Piri Viribya, or the Mishnah said L'Sheves Yitzara, we forced the master to free him. So the Rabbi Yitzchak says there was an incident, and the same thing was regarding a half Shivcha, half Bas Chayrim. Says the Gemara, why did they force her? She doesn't have a mitzvah of Piri Viribya. The mitzvah of Piri Viribya only applies to the husband, not to the woman. Says the Gemara, Keman Kerab Yechanim and Breike. This seems to be following Rabbi Yechanim and Breike's opinion. The Amar, he says, Al Shneim Uwaime Vayavarach Aisam Elikim Vayem Egayim Pru Urevu. Aisam goes both on the Zachar and the Nekeva. They both have the mitzvah of Pru Urevu. Umil Vagayim. So therefore, you do force the master to free the Chatzi Shivcha, Chatzi Bas Chayrin, for her to fulfill the mitzvah as well. Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, no, not necessarily is that the pshat of here. Loi. Rather, what happened was minag hefker no guba. It's because the case was, since she couldn't get married to anyone, so people were being mizana with her, people were not being careful with her, so therefore, in order for people not to take advantage of her, they forced the master to free her. But not necessarily that she have the mitzvah of peri viribya. A person goes ahead and sells his eved kanani to a guy. Or he sells him out to someone that lives outside Eretz Yisrael. Yatza ben Chayren. So the Eved that he's just sold, there's a knas, Chachamim give a knas that this Eved becomes free. Rashi explains the reason is because this Eved Kanani is chayiv in mitzvahs. Chayiv in mitzvahs like a woman. The fact that you sell him to a guy, which will now make it very difficult for him to fulfill mitzvahs, so there's a knas for that. And same thing, selling him into chutzlaretz, he's chayiv in mitzvahs like a yid, like a woman, and he's not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. There's an isra to leave Eretz Yisrael. So because you're selling him, and he's going to be forced to go to live with a master outside Eretz Yisrael, so there's a knas that he goes free. So if this guy that bought him will free him, or he'll run away from that guy, he's free. He doesn't have to go back to his original master. We learned in a brayso about this halacha. You sell, you have it to a guy, so there's the knas of chachamim that he goes free. But v'tzarach get shichra mirab berishain. The first master still has to give him a get shichra for him to be fully free. When does he have to give him a shtar to free him? If he didn't write for him oinai, which the Gemara will explain right here. This is his freedom. My oinai, what does it mean oinai? Amar Rav Sheishes, the Kosav Lei, he wrote to him Hachi as follows: when you run away from this guy that I'm selling you to, Ein li esik bach. I have nothing to do with you anymore. So even though I didn't clearly write him a shtar shikhr the way you usually write, but this is enough that he's disconnected from him and he's totally free. Tana Rabbanan and a brayso we learned lava olav min oivik kechavim. If you borrow money from a guy and you make up with the guy that he's going to come and collect his payment, this evet will now be the collection of the payment and it'll belong to the guy. So this is sort of similar to what we're talking about, that you're selling your evet to this guy. The guy is going to collect this evet for the payment of the loan. As soon as the guy does for this evet the way it's customary with a slave, he already goes out free. Even though he didn't yet collect him for the loan, he already goes out free. So the Gemara explains, "Maini musai." What does it mean that you did for the guy what's the guy that is did for the eved what's customary? Omer Rav Huna by Yehuda.
The eved did for the guy.
No, the guy did for the eved. Here, let's see what the Gemara says. Omer Rav Huna by Yehuda nashki. This means nashki. Rashi says it means that when a person buys a slave, he puts on him a certain seal that he belongs to him, that he's his slave, and he carries the seal around with him. That's the minig that they would do with an evet you acquire. So as soon as this guy puts this nashki, this seal on this evet, even though he didn't yet mamish collect him for the loan that he's been collected for, but nevertheless, it immediately, it's like he already is totally sold to this guy and he goes free. The knas of the chachamim that he goes free applies. Most of Rav Sheishes, and this Rav Sheishes asks the question, ha'arisin, workers in a field. Okay, so what this brayso is speaking about, as Rashi explains, is a guy that owns a property in Eretz Yisrael. So there's a machlekes regarding such a case, whether the produce that grows in that field, is it still chayiv in Trumas and Maasros or not. The Tana of this Braisa holds that if the guy has the ownership in this land, there's no chiyuv of Trumas and Maasros. But there's a yid that's working here in this land with different kinds of deals that he has with the owner, the guy. One is ha'arisin. An aris is a worker that gets paid from the produce in the field. He gets a certain percent, half, third, a quarter of the produce of the field. Achakirais is basically a renter. He's renting this property from the guy, and he has a deal with the guy that he pays him a certain percent of the wheat that grows, for example, he gives to the guy, but the rest is his. He's renting it. Or even, not only is he a worker, but already from before, for years, his father worked for the guy, the father of this guy, that they were working in this field for already a generation. So in other words, the involvement of the Yid's work in this field is to that extent. Or or a guy that borrowed money from a Yid, and this property here is being given to the Yid as a mashkan, as a collateral for the payment. So you have a very strong involvement of the Yid working in this property. Says the Braisa, even if it was done with this field the way it's customary, for this Yid, here, regarding this case of the mashkin, so the Yid did what's customary here with this field, p'turim and a meiser. You still pater of meiser because the guy is still the owner. Now, what does it mean that the guy did or the Yid that is rather, the Yid did what's customary with this field here? If you're going to say, like we said before, that this expression of nimusa means nashki, that you put a seal on this evet, and that shows that already that he's sort of his evet, and therefore he goes free. Sada bas nashkihi. Could you translate that here as well? That asalei nimusay means the same thing. There is no such a concept of placing a seal on a field. So what does this concept of nimusay mean over here? It can't mean the same as before. So we have to teach this concept of nimusay differently. Elam and Rav Sheisha, so therefore Rav Sheisha says the meaning of asalei nimusay means as follows: zman. What it means is, if the time that he's supposed to collect this loan comes and he didn't have any payment, then, since by the case of the Eved, he's supposed to take the Eved, so therefore the Eved goes free. And over here, regarding the property, the same thing. The Taich over here, that Asaleni Musa means the time of payment comes. And the Yid is coming to collect now this field for this, it's a mashkin, and he's coming to collect it. That's what Nimusa means. But now the Gemara asks, if so, kashya zman azman. So if so, we have a contradiction over here regarding this halacha, when there's a collateral here, whether the eved is the mashkin, so you sort of designated this eved that he's going to collect from the eved, or regarding the property, the sodet, that's a mashkin, and you said to the yid that you can collect this field, and there's a contradiction over here regarding when the time arrives. Regarding the eved, you say, once the time arrives, so the eved goes free, it's as if the guy owns him already. And regarding the property, you say that even though the time for the Yid to collect it arrived, nevertheless, it still belongs to the guy and it's potter from Meiser. Answers the Gemara, like Kashi, there's no contradiction. Ha the mat is zimnei, ha the loy mat is zimnei. One is it's talking about when the time of the loan payment arrived. That's by the case of the Evet, so he goes free. Ha the loy mat is zimnei. Over here by the field, the time did not arrive yet. It's taka mashkin, and he's going to collect from it if he doesn't pay him, but the time didn't arrive yet, so therefore he doesn't go free yet. Or the property does not belong to the Yisrael yet. For the Gemara, how could you may say that this is the answer? So Ella Gabi Eved, the Mata Zimne. If the case is that the time for the guy to take this Eved to pay for the pay arrived already, is there any chiddush over here to say that he goes free because now the guy already took this Eved and the knas applies for the Yid selling this Eved to the guy? What's the chiddush? Obviously, the time arrived. It's his. Ella answers the Gemara, both of them, the time did not arrive. But v'loi kashya, there's no question. There's a difference here between the property and the eved. Ha legufa. Regarding the eved, you made up with the guy that the collection is going to be the eved himself, the whole body of the eved. That's who he's able to collect. So therefore, even before the time arrives, the guy treats this eved like his master. He tells the eved, "You're the guy. I'm going to collect you another week or two. You're going to be mine." So you ready? He treats him like an eved already. So therefore, the kanas already applies at that point. Even though you didn't mamish sell him yet, but you were mezalzel in the takon of the chachamim that said not to take your eved out to a guy. So therefore, he goes free already. And v'hala peri. But when it comes to the sada, it's talking over here about the fruits. He's telling him that only the fruits you're going to be able to take from my property. So therefore, over here in this case, just from the fruits of the property, if the time didn't arrive yet, so you're not going to say that it's already totally in his possession, and therefore it's still the guy's fruits, and there's no chiyuv of meister. Another answer to the stira of the two braises. The case of here is that the Yid borrowed money from the guy with the condition that he's going to take a mashkin, but in actuality, the mashkin was not taken. So Rashi explains what happened over here is that he made up with the guy that when the time of payment arrives, this eved will be the mashkin. Or in the case of the other braise, the property will be the mashkin. So the time of payment already arrives, but the payol, the mashkin was not taken. So by Yesada we say, because he did not take the peiris as a mashkin, so therefore the peiris will be potter from Meiser. But regarding the Eved, even if B'Poyel, the guy did not take this Eved as a mashkin, but nevertheless, because the time of payment arrived, and he could take him as a mashkin, and you're not paying to make sure that the guy does not take this Eved as a mashkin, the knas applies that the Eved will go free.